We live in interesting times, and as you probably know, this is a Chinese curse. It's not a good thing to live in interesting times, at least from the perspective of the Chinese, who are a very ancient and wise culture. And they have reasons to believe that interesting times are bad times. In China, you get a premium for safety and security because they have been through so many uncertain times, and they don't like it. Now, we live in very interesting times. This is not a video on China. I just used that quote to point out how interesting our times are. And in today's video, we are going to talk about Tesla. We are going to talk about the greater market outlook. We are going to talk about the problems with stocks like Micron and other semiconductor stocks, including NVDIA. And we are trying to make sense of what's actually happening right now with the stocks we like so much, our AI stocks. So, starting with Tesla, we see amazing levels of Cybercabs being churned out every day now. There's a big debate, and I have a white pill. I'm starting with a white pill, and I'm ending with a black pill, and maybe another white pill in the end, but I'm starting with a white pill. The debate is, will Tesla get delayed again? Is Cybercab just an illusion? Is Elon gonna miss all these deadlines again? Are we here in 5 years and still no rollout? And I've been very clear, when you look at the facts, I've been clear for a year now that I'm very bullish that we will see thousands and thousands and thousands of unsupervised Teslas driving around passengers very soon, and I'm sticking to my initial projection that we will have between 10 and 20,000 unsupervised robotaxis. Not by 2030, as Morgan Stanley implies. Morgan Stanley thinks 30,000 by 2030. I'm saying 15,000 this year. I might be off by a month or two, but I do not think so. And even if, let it be Q1 2027. The fact is, Cybercab is being produced en masse right now, and we see this happening. I'm convinced this is happening. Now, that was the white pill, and we see all these signs all over X that we actually have that coming. We see engineering tests of the first production Cybercab. We see all these. Yesterday in the live stream, we looked close into these and see they actually don't have steering wheels. Everyone's talking about steering wheels. There are no steering wheels. These are fully autonomous Cybercabs, as we know. They're produced right now. So this is happening. I'm not going to go into more details here. But now comes a black pill. Why this might not help the stock much. The stock is not doing great on Monday. The stock is actually sliding down into the 370 area before earnings. And I want to give you guys my take on what is actually happening here. And my take is that this is actually not and has nothing to do with any projections I made for Tesla or other people made. I think Tesla is actually now delivering. I think Tesla is doing exactly what we expected it, what the bulls expected Tesla to do. I think the debate about Tesla missing again and failing to deliver robotaxi is the wrong story, because they do not fail and they are delivering it. Maybe they are late, maybe people are frustrated, but forget it, in 6 months from now, they will have delivered. And in 2027, they are going to scale to hundreds of thousands of Cybercabs. The problem is a very different one. The problem is, even if Tesla does so, we might have a problem. And that problem for shareholders has not much to do with Tesla not delivering. It has to do with the general state of the market. And the general state of the market right now is something that I call an inverse bubble. People talk about the AI bubble. I think when you look at the facts, I just saw a very dumb video. Some of these visual explanatory videos that get a lot of views on YouTube, very professionally produced, and they compared the current so-called AI bubble with the .com bubble and draw all these parallels. They were talking about how Cisco went through the roof. Okay, went up 10, 20 times, became nearly the largest company for a short period of time. And they said it's the same with NVIDIA right now. Okay, let that sink in. They said it's the same with NVIDIA right now. And then they said literally, Cisco, a giant company, was trading at 120 times earnings at the peak. And this is like NVIDIA. This is why it's like NVIDIA. These people don't seem to understand that NVIDIA trades at the lowest valuation we have seen in a very long time, under 20, at around 17 forward price earnings. So the argument we are in a bubble is actually highly idiotic. We are at the opposite of a bubble. We are in a period where companies raking in hundreds of billions in cash, tens of billions in additional earnings, growing their earnings above 100% a year, and are trading at the lowest price earnings ratios we have ever seen. That is very weird. And I will get to this in a second why that might be, but what does it mean for Tesla? It means the following. Maybe you followed Micron. Let's go to Micron for a second. Just new Micron news. Micron is the HDM RAM company, or they do all kinds of RAM. They're US based. They're the second largest manufacturer of RAM that is needed in high-end AI chips after SK Hynix, the Koreans. So SK Hynix is the biggest, and then Micron, and then Samsung. These three have 90% market share for this important RAM, the RAM that fuels all these chips. NVIDIA, AMD, everyone needs them. Probably even Tesla and the Terafab. Everyone needs these chips, these RAM chips, these very high bandwidth chips, HDM, and no one can manufacture that stuff. It's extremely difficult to manufacture. Only these companies can do it. No competition at the horizon, not even in China. So that is Micron. And UBS just said Micron could repurchase more than 40% of its shares by the end of 2028. That is very soon. That's like in 30 months. Once its buyback restriction expires in December 2026. So they have a buyback restriction. They're not allowed to buy a lot of their shares back, but that expires December of this year. The firm, meaning the Union Bank of Switzerland, expects Micron to generate over 400 billion. Just think about that number. $400 billion in free cash flow through 2028, which could fund the repurchases at current prices. That company trades at 1 trillion right now. It's generating not even earnings, it's generating free cash flow of $400 billion in the next 30 months. Just think about that. They're earning in free cash flow 40% of their entire market cap just in the next 2.5 years. You know, if that doesn't tell you anything, it's completely nuts. This is the extreme opposite of a bubble when it comes to their stock price. It's the lowest valuations we have ever seen for hyper-growth companies. It's ridiculous. Micron trades close to 6 price earnings right now. 6 times earnings. But it grows the earnings above 100% a year. Now, why is that a problem for Tesla? It is a problem for Tesla because when you compare Tesla to Micron, when you actually would put them on par and say, well, Micron is an amazing technology company. They have cornered the market. They produce these RAM pieces. There's infinite demand for the foreseeable future because no one can manufacture it. Demand for chips is going through the roof, and all projections now, more and more, our own Pioneer Lens and Pioneer Alpha projections show that we will be undersupplied on chips and, of course, RAM all the way to 2030, even in the best case, and potentially much longer. Other firms like Morgan Stanley and others say the same thing. UBS, they're all saying the same thing. We are not getting out of that supply crunch because the demand is insane. Now, if we would actually compare that, okay, and now comes the giant black pill from a Tesla perspective. If you compare these two companies and would apply Micron Technology's valuation logic to Tesla, I just tweeted this today, I will give you a giant black pill. If Tesla would deploy 2 million robotaxis this year by December, not 15,000 as I predict, where most people think I'm crazy. Let's assume they deploy 2 million robotaxis this year. And they're making roughly 100 billion in earnings with that. 50,000 per robotaxis, our prediction at scale. $50,000 in earnings. Maybe it's between 40 and 50,000 earnings per robotaxi, assuming no competition, which is not, there is no competition at the horizon for robotaxi at scale. They would make $100 billion in additional earnings, which is roughly 20 times what they make now, 25 times. So, okay, that's a lot of money. 2 million robotaxis this year, and would be on track of growing that to 4 million, 100% growth by 2027 to $200 billion in earnings. Now comes the black pill. If you apply Micron valuation logics to that, the market in a response to that Elon walks out of the door and says, surprise, we are deploying 2 million robotaxis, and next year we are deploying 4 million robotaxis. And the market would react to it as they react to Micron right now. They would sell off Tesla stock and drop it to $350 to $360 a share, from 370 to 1 trillion. Let that sink in. Okay? Let that sink in. That is happening right now. That's the level of madness we are seeing right now. Hey, on this channel, we do something very important. We deeply analyze, understand, and predict capital, AGI, and politics. Not just to beat the markets and make a lot of money, even though that's important, but also to build a new society and make the future good for all of us, the pioneers. If you want to help me on this journey, you can do that by doing a very simple thing. Like and subscribe. It helps me a lot. Thank you so much for your support, and let's get back to the video. Of course, I'm also continuing. The market would likely give Tesla a higher valuation, a much higher valuation, because robotaxi scales more uncontested and is not subject to potential price crashes and oversupply issues that are projected into Micron. But realistically, neither is Micron in the next 2 years. So the market is being irrational on Micron. They're saying, well, they're making a total killing. They're growing their free cash flow to 400 billion. But maybe at some point it stops, and therefore we are not buying this stock. Well, you can say that with Tesla the same way. You can say, well, you're deploying 2 million robotaxis this year, 4 million next year, 8 million the year after. But what happens if then you only sell, if you only grow the fleet from 8 million to 10 million the year after? So we can't buy your stock. So you understand what I mean? We have to understand, when markets are in bubbles, there's something called irrational exuberance. Pets.com. You're putting billions of dollars of market cap on a stupid stock that has no earnings. The same is true in what we see right now, inverse bubbles, where everything is negative, regardless how positive it is. You can go into the market and say, look, I have an ice cream stand. The ice cream stand makes $1,000 a day because, there are all these kids working on the ice cream. $1,000 a day. This ice cream stand makes $300,000 profit a year. And I want to sell it to you for $900,000 for a 3 price earnings ratio. And in 3 years, you make your money back. The market right now is going to say, no way, I'm not going to pay $900,000 for a $300,000 earnings ice cream stand. I pay you $350,000, $450,000. I want all my money back that I'm buying this ice cream stand for in 18 months. Because why not? And there's no argument against that, by the way. There is no argument. When it comes to valuations, you have no arguments. Valuations that's the end point of decision making. If the market decides, you know what, we don't give anyone any valuation anymore. We just want our money back immediately. If I pay you $1 billion for the company, I expect profits to roll in $1 billion in profits within 12 months because that's what I want. If everyone has that attitude, that's where the price goes. If they say, well, I expect to pay $1 billion and I want this $1 billion back in earnings in 1,000 years, I pay you a 1,000 price earnings ratio, then that's what it is. That's what we have to understand. When the market wants to go nuts, it goes nuts. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Now, one last commentary why I think this is happening. Why is the market so irrational right now? Why is the market completely dumping prices like a crazy person? Is that just an AI bubble talk, panic talk that's irrational like we saw in November? Some bubble talk, or a DeepSeek moment where the market's just idiotic, stupid, and sees, oh, DeepSeek is coming out. Maybe now that AI and intelligence gets cheaper, people won't use chips anymore. The dumbest reaction I've ever seen. I bought NVIDIA like crazy. Oh, of course, it bounced back because people realized cheaper intelligence means more sales, Jevons paradox and stuff like that. Are we in a moment like that? Is it just another AI bubble talk thing that drops the prices right now of everything that is high growth and AI driven? Or is it something else? And I will do another video on that this week. It's very important. A deeper video that looks deeper into the real macro situation, macro psychology that is haunting the world right now. And I realized this more and more over the last few weeks. I was, of course, doing Tesla and Pioneer Alpha, but I was also working on the Pioneer Academy and with our analysts looking at the world at large and projecting out the next 5 years. The next 5 years of AI transformation on a macro level. What happens to jobs? When do we actually hit human equivalency for digital workers? Very soon. When do we reach effectively economic AGI? Not real AGI, but economic AGI, where we can replace all jobs. Very soon. What happens then? What are the new bottlenecks? What's the role of reality engineers and pioneers? What's the role of new education? And what happens to the fiscal health of our countries? What happens to elections? And the fact that we are getting now into the hot phase of the singularity. The hot phase, that's why Micron goes through the roof. That's why Tesla suddenly can deploy robotaxis. That's why NVIDIA goes through the roof. But what does it mean for the world? And the more you think about that, the more you realize, to go back to the beginning of this video, it means we live in the most interesting times in the history of humanity, by far. And that is not a good thing for the markets, because the markets think there is an event horizon, in case you're familiar with that term. The event horizon is the horizon beyond that you cannot see. It comes from black holes and time being bent and stuff like that, time and space. So it is basically a point in time where you have no visibility beyond. And the problem is that event horizon is now extremely close. It's around 2028 and 2029, where we lose our ability to look beyond that, because the level of disruption we are going to see from AI are going to be so enormous on our countries and politics and economics, fiscal health, and then trickling and exploding all across the stock market into all these stocks, that there is an enormous level of uncertainty. There's some good news in there, a lot of good news, that it's out of question that profits will absolutely skyrocket for most companies. It is also very clear that companies like Micron, NVIDIA, AMD, the hyperscalers will reap enormous benefits. It's also clear that Optimus and Tesla will be absolutely enormous. SpaceX will be probably the ultimate winner. All this is clear. And I don't think the market disagrees with that. But the market says, you know what, Joe? I believe all that stuff because it's clear. But what happens to the stock exchanges? What happens to New York City? What happens to DC? What happens to the United States? What happens to Europe? What happens to Germany? What happens to China? And the answer is very clear. We don't know. And that is very scary. We are talking about a destabilization on an absolutely massive scale. We saw the first little blinks and glimpses of that, with Fable being shut down, with Seoul being shut down, the discussion now with Kimi K3 and the US government having debates if they shut down the Chinese models. That's the latest talk today, by the way. This is getting unstable and it's getting scary. And if markets don't like something, it is being scared and seeing event horizons and unpredictability. Even if everyone would agree that very likely the net effect will be enormously positive, especially for stocks like the hyperscalers and NVIDIA and the semiconductors and Micron and Tesla and SpaceX, But the uncertainty on the macro level is overriding that. And everyone who knows markets knows that this is true. If you tell markets you will have tremendous upside and a golden age is coming, only that there might be civil war in between, the market is not going to increase. The market is going to sell off. So that's what I believe is going to be the paradigm that's going to haunt us for the next foreseeable months, maybe the next years, because it's just a fact. And our job here at Pioneer Alpha, at Pioneer Lands, is maybe we can contribute to more clarity. But that clarity can only come if we are doing our job and being good quantitative analysts and economists and political forecasters. Sometimes people criticize me that I am also commenting on things like Iran, sometimes Russia and Ukraine. We have to. We are getting into a phase where you need to understand everything, because if you don't understand everything, you don't understand anything. Because now things get extremely connected. And at the heart of that is not Russia, it's not Putin, it's not Trump. At the heart of that is AGI and the disruption that it's going to trigger that will reshuffle the entire political and economic landscape of the world. It is time to really dig deep into that so we can get prepared individually, and we can get prepared as the pioneers in Pioneer Land, and we can get prepared as Tesla investors, micro investors, NVDIA investors, and hopefully as a capital and investment community. Because if we don't get prepared, if we don't understand what's happening, the uncertainty will just skyrocket, the markets will get increasingly irritated, and with a decreased horizon, the fantasy decreases and price earnings compress across the board. That is my prediction. So let's make sure we have clarity on that. Let's keep expanding as a channel, as a community. Let's connect to other people, from smart analysts like Adam Jonas, Dan Ives, Kathy Woods, to other YouTubers. It's our job to create this clarity for ourselves and for everyone. Otherwise, this is going to get worse. That's my prediction. So sorry I was a little more macro in this video, but it was very important, and I hope that was interesting. More to come very soon. Thanks so much.